Brooklyn Independent Television.
Hello, I'm District Attorney Charles Hynes, and welcome to Brooklyn Elected Officials. Today my guest is State Senator Eric Adams, and we'll be talking with the State Senator about the affairs of Brooklyn and other issues. So, welcome, Senator.
Thank you, District Attorney.
So you've had a well-rounded career. You were a police officer. And what motivated you to join the NYPD?
I believe that, after being a police officer for 22 years and both patrolling the subway systems as a transit police officer in the beginning of my career and moving on to the merger of all the departments that house the NYPD, you have a well-rounded experience of what's impacting New Yorkers. Mm-hmm. And as a police officer, you are responding to those conditions. Mm-hmm. But as a legislator, you can actually write laws that would impact and improve those conditions in a proactive fashion, and that's why I decided to run.
That was a definable difference. But what motivated you in the first instance as a kid to decide to become a police officer?
I always wanted to become a police officer. I think all children, when they see a police officer, your first attraction is just to see that firearm and then the uniform and the shield. And so, you learn from experiences. And I saw how I wanted to be treated as a citizen and as a human being. And that's the spirit I brought into policing.
And what year did you join the department?
1984.
84.
Time moved so fast.
Yeah. Now, in 84, it was a different police department, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. We were dealing with serious crime issues. We were dealing with also some internal issues in policing. Mm-hmm. And police, for the most part, believed that they could not impact crime. Mm-hmm. They thought that they could only respond to crime. Right. It's only almost similar to what you're doing as a prosecutor, understanding that we can do more than just watch crime happen. And that's how the policing was.
Was the fact that there weren't many people of color and African Americans a problem for you when you became a cop?
Yeah, it was a concern. And I was one of those officers that you went through several hoops to become a police officer. And it wasn't for the Guardians Association, which was the fraternal organization at that time, that sued to make sure that those of us who were on the list, because after you take the exam, you go on the list, they had to fight to make sure that we were actually appointed to be police officers. Mm-hmm. It was a serious struggle about diversifying the department.
It was a court challenge.
Yes, it was. Right. And they subsequently won the challenge. The judge saw that many officers of color or potential candidates were pushed to the back of the list, and then once they were pushed to the back of the list expired before they had an opportunity to be hired.
Mm-hmm. And there was no question that it was intentionally done.
That's what the judge ruled. He saw a problem in it. Yeah. And because of what the judge saw a problem in, it opened the door. And I think it really started the process of you seeing a diversity in the police department. We're nowhere near where we ought to be, but it's far more diverse than 1984 when I came into the department.
I think that the figure they use is 48% of the police department now is people of color.
Right, and that's a creative number. When you look at it, the areas where we're really having problems is recruiting black men. Yeah. We have made little or no inroads in that area. We have increased in the area of Hispanic men, Hispanic women, and also women. So we're not where we ought to be. It's sort of a creative way of just basically stating we have to do a better job.
Sure. Now, how long were you a patrol officer before you passed the sergeant exam?
I took, interesting, I took 3 sergeant exams before I was promoted. There were a lot of people who actually got promoted before me, but by the time I left the department, they were saluting me because I was able to catch up for the lost time. It was a diligent study, and I was I think a police officer about 8 or 9 years before I was promoted sergeant, and subsequently got promoted to lieutenant, and moved on to be promoted to captain.
Was the same kind of problem, did that exist in the sergeant exam as well, that they were holding back people of color?
No. The sergeant exam, thank goodness for the civil service system. It was all about being competitive. Okay. It was a competitive examination. The most you want to do is fight to make sure the questions are fair and to ensure that people are able to take a fair exam,
And for how long were you a sergeant before you were promoted to lieutenant?
I was a sergeant for about 5 or 6 years, and then after that, I subsequently was promoted to the rank of a lieutenant. And probably one of the proudest moments after serving as a lieutenant for several years was being promoted to the rank of captain. That is a difficult rank. It is really a high quality group of men and women who actually obtained that rank, and that was an extremely proud moment for me when I was promoted to the rank of captain.
Tell me about the 100 Black Men in Law Enforcement. You were one of the founders, were you not?
Yes, I was one of the co-founders with a group of 10 other individuals. And the goal was a three-part goal. One was to really teach young people about conflict resolution, how to interact with police in a better way. It shouldn't always be confrontational. All of us remember Police Officer Joe Friendly that we interacted with as children, and we wanted to bring back that spirit. The second was to be the social and moral conscious for the police department, to make sure in areas of police abuse or police misconduct that we appropriately report that and had a mechanism where the public can come and actually tell us about those issues. And the third was to give back to our community. We pooled our money together, and each month we would give back $1,000 to small mom and pop, we like to say, organizations, Little League team, buying books for college students in a very real way. And every month we would give $1,000 stipend to some small group. So those were the three main reasons of using our law enforcement experience to helping people and also helping our department.
And can I assume that one of the consequences was to inspire other young men of color to think about the police department?
Without a doubt. We wanted them to see us. You know, we consciously built into the organization an apparatus where we would do public statements so people can see men of color in particular in business attire, talking about real issues, articulating those issues, and so that they too can say that, you know what, I want to be part of the police department. Because far too many don't want to be a police officer in communities of color because they believe they lose a part of themselves, and we were able to change that image.
Now, were you a recognized organization by the NYPD?
No, we never sought recognition by the NYPD. We were a human rights, civil rights organization that happened to be police officers. So we were never part of the fraternal group. Those organizations that are recognized by the police department are part of the internal fraternal groups within the police department, and we never sought that. We were no different than the NAACP, the Urban League, or some of those other organizations. We were separate from the police department, but we happened to be law enforcement officers.
Was there any effort to influence the organization or to discourage any public statements by the organization?
Yeah, there were many attempts. You know, there was a period of time when
they didn't do well with you with those.
No. There was plenty times when the department made attempts to infiltrate the organization. The department made attempts to discourage. We had to go to court to fight, to talk about public issues. So it was a battle. But I think people don't remember, even back when the Guardian Angels started with Curtis Lewa, there was a fight to stop them from patrolling the subway system. Many people don't recall that.
I recall.
So organizations who are going to be vociferous about improving agencies, they often come under conflict, and one should be prepared for that.
Now, what was the single most important decision you made about going into public life as an elected official?
Making the decision to run. You know, as you know, as a district attorney, your day starts early and it ends late. Our families take a beating on that, and it's hard on the families. When we are elected to office, so too are our families and our loved ones, because these communities we represent actually become our families. And so understanding that was a decision and making an appropriate decision. I had a son at the time, and he was a young man, and, you know, a young man needs his dad around. And I became the surrogate father for other young men within the 20th Senatorial District. That was an important decision.
And you were willing to make that sacrifice, and your family was supportive.
Extremely supportive, and my son, you know, found himself in the process. He became a young adult. He's 16 now. He did 2 movies about public safety, staying in school, and domestic teenage violence. So through what he saw, what I did publicly as an elected official, he found himself and found his voice in the process, which was excellent.
And the first run you made was for state senate?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did a run years ago for Congress when Major Owens was in office. This was back in the early 90s.
Right.
But the first real run for office was state senate. It's a seat that Carl Andrews had before he ran for Congress, and Marty Markowitz had prior to Carl Andrews.
So it was an open seat?
Yes, it was. It was
Okay.
an open seat.
And did you have organization support at the time?
Yes, the county leader at the time, Vito Lopez, he looked at my career as a police officer, and he thought that it was an attractive career to actually run for a Senate, and he was supportive. And I received overwhelming support from a countless number of elected officials, unions, and other traditional organizations that participate in politics because of the career I had prior to politics.
Now, was there a primary?
Yes, it was. I had one. It started out with 5 individuals that were going to run. And once I entered the race and decided to announce that I was running, 3 of them automatically pulled out. 2 stayed for a little longer. And then it was just came down to me and one other individual.
And you knew at the time that when you were running that you would be in the minority in the state senate.
Yes,
correct?
yes, we were clear of that. And
now, what is it about you that you decide you want to be in a place where you're going to have to fight most of the time?
Because it's about coalition building. If you were to go to Albany and speak with the Republicans who controlled the Senate at the time, they would tell you that I was a gentleman. I had a great relationship with my Republican colleagues to today. We consider ourselves to be that antiquated term, friends. And so I knew I had to go there and build coalitions and actually reach out and build relationships.
Was the claim of dysfunction a valid one, or was that overplayed?
I think
Albany was dysfunctional.
Well, I'm glad you said that because it is overplayed. The process of governing, if it's frictionless, then it's not appropriate because we represent different parts of the state. Right. We're supposed to, when we write laws, we're not writing concept, we're writing items and documents that will change lives. We should debate them. We should argue them. Emotion should be involved. And so what is needed in Buffalo may be different from what's needed on Buffalo Avenue in Brooklyn. And so what appears to be a dysfunctional atmosphere, in fact, it's an atmosphere about the slow grinding of changing laws. And that's major when you change laws.
But it was, I take it, much more difficult under Governor Spitzer than it is under Governor Cuomo to have that kind of camaraderie with members of the majority. Is that accurate?
Some may say so. I don't. I believe that no matter who's the governor at the time, that's the executive branch of government. I believe the legislators have a responsibility and obligation that when you leave the Senate chamber, to also foster a relationship with each other, because the politics is the art of compromise. Right. How do we make sure that we walk out of the room with a win-win? It doesn't have to be a win-lose, and that is my goal, no matter what part of government I am in, to find win-win scenarios.
So how many terms did you spend in the minority as a state senator?
Interestingly enough, I spent 1 term in the minority, which was important because you get a flavor of what the minority's life is like. And after that 1 term, we were able to successfully gain the majority the next 2 years that I was in the Senate.
And while you're in the minority, were you able to get any legislation through working with your Republican colleagues?
You could get legislation through not by merely sponsoring legislation, but co-sponsoring legislation that you think are important. Right. And I was able to co-sponsor some bills that I thought was important and sign on to those bills. And they made their way to the floor, and they were subsequently signed by the governor into law.
Can you give me an example of a couple of bills you're most proud
of? One bill that I'm extremely proud of is it was an addition to the hate crime legislation that we had on the book. If someone was to merely hang a noose, that was not considered a crime in itself. And so we were able to add a law that by hanging a noose itself would add to a crime. It was difficult for police to prosecute, based on just the hanging of the noose or swastika or some other item like that. So we were able to add an additional part of the law based on that.
And when you became a member of the majority, what committee did you chair?
I chaired several committees. I was one of the only senators that chaired two committees. I chaired Homeland Security and Veterans Affairs, and I chaired Racing and Waging in the state. And I sat on Crime and Correction and some other committees in addition, like Consumer Protection. Mm-hmm. But the most important committee for me was Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security. It gave me an opportunity to bring my law enforcement experience and talk about how do we keep the city safe, how do we keep the state safe, and also how do we look after our veterans. You know, oftentimes people believe patriotism is merely hanging a flag on your doorstep, but it's not. It's making sure when our soldiers come home that they come home with a welcome mat of jobs, home security, and able to protect their families.
And did you become familiar with some of the veterans courts that have begun to sprout up around the state?
Excellent ideas. I was extremely supportive of the Veterans Court. We made a mistake after Vietnam.
Yes.
We did not address some of the needs of our veterans, and many of them fell into a state of despair, either through drugs, alcohol, or crimes that evolved into serious crimes. And I think we're trying to prevent that from happening now.
You know, I can understand your passion for people and your sensitivities getting involved in Veterans Affairs, but what were you doing in Racing and Wagering?
Because it was about jobs, and what people don't realize is that New York State used to have this fantastic racing industry with hundreds of thousands of people participated. And I saw the vision. I'm a supporter. I believe in full gaming in New York. We should not have our constituent base go to Atlantic City, Pennsylvania, or Connecticut. It was my vision to introduce the first bill in years to talk about full gaming. People thought I was crazy, but I knew it could happen. Now we have the Aqueduct of Casino, Racino taking place, and we see the potential of building full gaming. And I'm hoping to do so in the waterfront of all of our various waterfronts to build casinos. Those are jobs. Right now, people need jobs.
How do you feel about legalizing gambling?
I'm a strong supporter in legalizing gambling. And with legalization of gambling, we must make sure we have safeguards to prevent not the abuse of gambling.
And so I assume you're aware of the enormous amounts of money that goes to organized crime because it's not legalized.
Exactly, and we can stop that. By legalizing gaming, we will close the door on many of the organized crime operations that, in addition to just poker game and card games, come the violence that's associated with it as well.
So what's holding it up? I mean, that's a fundamentally sound position to take. What in the name of God is holding it up? Well,
the Speaker of the Assembly has always been opposed to gaming, and there are several members in the caucus, particularly the Black, Hispanic, and Latino caucus, that they were against legalizing gaming. And it is my job to show them why this is important and why some of the fears that one has is not realistic.
Is it a moral position?
Some say, and we need to show how it's possible to have legal gaming without destroying families, because we don't want people betting their paychecks or betting their rent away. But you do want to allow the recreation that's involved in legalized gaming and the profits. We are gaming. We may not be gaming in New York. Our tax dollars are going to Vegas and other surrounding areas, but New Yorkers are betting and they are participating in gaming.
And without any kind of regulation.
Exactly. Yeah. And this way we can have the regulation to prevent gaming from taking place in the shadows of our communities and bring it to the forefront.
You've been one of the most outspoken critics of stop and frisk in New York City. And you're familiar, of course, with Commissioner Kelly's challenging the city council at a hearing. Well, give me an alternative. And, of course, there were a lot of editorial writers who said that he didn't get an effective alternative. What would be your alternative?
Well, and that's a key term, effective, because the term effective is really based on one's opinion on what they think is important and not as important. First, we need to say stop and frisk is not a bad policy in itself. It's a great policy. I use it as a police officer, and I supervise cops who use it as, when I was a captain, who use it as police officers.
If it's followed as a legal principle.
Exactly.
Right.
It's not the use of stop and frisk. It's the abuse of stop and frisk, and we have abused it. The alternative to dealing with the issue of crime, one, go back to faith-based initiatives. Get the clergy and other community-based organizations involved in crime. Two, put the money back in programs like some of the programs that you have done. These are real programs with track records from prestigious organizations that show they are successful. What we want to do, and I think is the wrong way to go, we believe that there is an instant remedy to dealing with the social issues that leads to crime. We can't just continue to put handcuffs on 11-year-old children. We have to find a way to make them productive members of society. I agree it's not the police job to be social service employees, but it is their job to fit into the overall fabric of how do we create an environment where young people are not criminalized at a young age. So when they're 17 and they stop and frisk and they're arrested for carrying a joint, when they become 21 and try to become an employee at American Express, that arrest is on their record. And that will prevent them from being productive members of society, and that's not the society that we want.
And effective stop and frisk is supposed to follow a legal principle that if you feel or if you have reasonable grounds to believe that someone might be involved in criminal conduct, you can stop them. And if during the course of a conversation with that person you feel some threats, you can then frisk. But of course, I'm told by so many people that it's stop and frisk, get up against the wall and submit. And
that's what we went off track with the stop and frisk program. It's not the good stop when you see someone that you believe is committing or has committed a crime, or when you're looking for a crime pattern in a particular area. The bad stops, which are the overwhelming number of stops, is when you tell an officer at the beginning of the night, you will come in with 10 stop and frisk, no matter if the person did a crime or not. And many officers are upset over this. So right. The quota-driven system of the process is what's hurting the process.
And I've recommended police officers give a identification card to someone who's stopped.
Well, that was one of my colleagues, Jamani Williams. That was a bill that he proposed in the city council. Right. I support that concept. I support also giving the people some form of receipt. I think we have to start identifying those officers who are abusing the process and those supervisors who are having officers abuse the process, because officers don't want to do this. Officers that I know and that I've policed with, they want to go out and catch bad people. They want to catch people who commit predatory crime like rape and robbery and burglary. Sure. They don't want to harass innocent citizens. That is not what we go into policing for. And if you would speak with the countless number of officers, they'll tell you the same thing.
What's next for Senator Adams?
Well, it's always been my love. I love this borough. I love the city. And Marty Markowitz, after probably one of the greatest careers in public service, is leaving. He's retiring after the end of 2013 because of term limits. I would love to be borough president of the borough of Brooklyn. Brooklyn is a growing borough. Is one of the most diverse boroughs. I represent one of the most diverse part of my districts of the city and state, and I would love to represent this borough. We're looking at it closely. We're doing what we have to do. First, to be reelected to Senate, and if the possibility shows itself in 2013, I'm going to throw my hat in the borough president race, and it would be a dream come true.
There was a time when the borough president's office was well funded. It had a seat on the board of estimate, and I just wonder about a guy like you who's been a fighter all his career, if you're going to be able to have the same satisfaction as the borough president with all the restricted budgets and not the same kind of authority that borough presidents used to have.
Well, it's creativity. One must use the office in a creative way of making Brooklyn a better place. And there's one goal I want to do as a borough president. I want to assist families on how to get out of debt. Mm-hmm. We must do that. Too many New Yorkers and too many Brooklynites are afraid about their tomorrow, and you don't need a large budget to recruit the volunteers that are needed and committed people to help families once again enjoy the prosperity that this entire city has enjoyed over the years.
Whoever the next mayor is, do you think you'll be able to use your bully pulpit as borough president to influence policy decisions for the people of Brooklyn?
Yes. One hidden tool of the borough president's office that's often overlooked is the ability to submit legislation and introduce bills. The borough president has that responsibility, and that's a tool in his arsenal. It's not used often or talked about, but I want to redefine the tools that we have and dust off some of those tools and use them to effectively get City Hall in the right place. It doesn't matter who the mayor is. I will make sure that I develop a good relationship with them. Brooklyn must be represented in an appropriate way.
And how would you go about galvanizing the support of the Brooklyn delegation and the council?
Well, I have a great relationship with my colleagues, not only throughout the city, but in particularly in the borough of Brooklyn. I'm often doing things in conjunction with them. We do great community-related issues. We're in the process of putting together an entire senior month program where we show different resources and services to seniors. So my relationship with my electors in the borough of Brooklyn is a great relationship, and it's about building bridges. You know, there's a goal. There's a reason that the Williamsburg, the Brooklyn, and Manhattan Bridge is connected to Brooklyn, because we realize in this borough we must build bridges with communities, not only with other boroughs.
Now you have obviously a well-recognized name, but there's the tacky issue of raising money to run for a political office. How are you going to go about that?
It's hard. It's hard. I started the process of raising money, and District Attorney, what is fascinating, over 75% of the individuals, of the 300 and something contributors that I received thus far, over 75% of them never gave to a campaign before.
That's terrific.
It is. And that's the energy of the campaign, public campaign finance law. It forces you to go to small donors, real everyday New Yorkers, and that's the process.
Now, have you created a committee?
Yes, we did. We started a committee, Eric Adams, 2013, looking towards the future. We're hoping, just as America was successful in electing the first person of color to the White House, we're hoping that history will have a new address with a Brooklyn zip code as we elect Eric Adams as the first person of color to the Brooklyn Borough Hall.
So another president. There is a precedent, right? And do you expect there'll be a primary?
It's quite possible.
Yeah.
It's an attractive office. There are many colleagues out there that I'm sure would like to run for the office. So it's about getting your message out. It's about showing that you are going to build bridges and you're going to build a strong Brooklyn. That's what I believe I would do.
Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank Senator Eric Adams. He's a great, stimulating guest for being a member of my show today, Elected Officials, on the Big Cat TV network. Good luck to you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Okay, buddy. Very good.
Watch this and other Brooklyn Independent Television episodes online at bricartsmedia.org/BIT.